Good morning and welcome to another episode from the Mommy Lifestyle channel. Today we are going to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and the looting and the riots and how it affects the family. But I'm not really sure. Like, that's what I want to talk about, but there's another topic that I'm also thinking about. I already took my shower, but I always feel like you do your best thinking when you're in the shower, and Corey's in the shower. So maybe I should ask Corey. Maybe I should ask Corey what he thinks. Corey, I have to ask you a question. I know this might be
weird because I'm in the shower.
Yes, a little weird.
Yes, it's very weird.
But people do their best thinking in the shower. So I need to know. Okay. I'm thinking about doing a YouTube video on like Black Lives Matter and looting and how it affects a normal family.
Okay.
What do you think? Do you think that's a good idea for me?
Absolutely. Because we talked about it in the last few months. I mean, obviously we know how it affects our family and our way of thinking, and you know, I'm pretty sure there's people who are closer to the fires than we are in some regards. So yeah, I do think it's important to touch on for sure.
So do you think I should jump in the shower with you too?
No.
Okay.
No, please don't.
Okay.
Please don't.
Okay, also, before we dive in, I really need to clean off my desk. Clearly yesterday got busy, so I'm going to clean off my desk and get dressed, and then we are going to jump right into this topic. Okay, so now that I'm all dressed, I'm ready to go. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think that for some people, the Black Lives Matter movement and the riots don't actually affect them where they live. It affects all of us because this is not about whether or not I agree with Black Lives Matter because, well, I'm Black and I'm a mom of all boys and my husband is Black. So I definitely agree. When you live in a large city, it hits home like 100% more. With the riots and the looting and the breaking into small businesses and destroying our cities and our streets. And I don't know if it does that more because I'm a mom. And I think that's where the huge difference is. Like, it's been the struggle for me really because it has directly affected my children. So of course, Crew, who is our youngest, 2 years old, he does not have any idea of what's really going on. The reason why this has affected my older children is because their whole world has changed in the course of 9 months. For the last 9 months, they've not been able to see their friends. They have not been able to go outside. It's just like a cultural shock for them at this point. It's like, what is happening? My life is flipped upside down. Now throw on top of that living in a city where every day they still protest for Black Lives Matter. Again, nothing against the movement because I stand with it. I stand beside it. I stand for it. And there's a whole nother ball game when it comes to protecting your family. It's just honestly been a lot. And I haven't thought about it being a lot until this most recent incident in Philadelphia. And the main reason why I wanted to get so into this is because I do have Black little boys that I'm raising. I have a Black father. I have a Black husband. I have 3 Black boys. I'm a Black woman. Me and my husband both have small Black owned businesses. Something that woke me up to this was, the first set of riots. So during the first set of riots, it was really, really scary for my children. Just imagine yourself being away for a weekend. The first weekend you've got to travel to see your family. Me and my sister both live in Philadelphia. We all traveled to DC to visit my sister to do this surprise graduation party. My sister had no intentions on spending the night. While we were there, the rioting started. While we were there, the city was, I mean, it was looted like crazy. At the moment of time that it was happening, it seemed like, okay, we get it. Like, I got it. Like, it was like, we're frustrated. George Floyd, this is crazy. Breonna Taylor, like, all of these things made it make sense. But then my sister and my brother were contemplating whether or not they were going to go back home. And again, they had no intentions of spending the night in DC. They were locking down the streets in Philadelphia, in the city. And they, like I said, they lived in the heart of the city. We had always had intentions of spending the night to kind of, wake up and travel in the morning. But my sister, it was unsafe. In my spirit, I felt like this is not the best time. One, as a mom, wife, sister, and a daughter, everything kind of went into perspective for me at that moment of them contemplating whether or not they should drive home. People who were harmed and hurt, killed during these protests. So this was a point when I was just like, is it wise for you guys to be out there on the road? Even for me, thinking about us going back in the morning, because I was fearful that anything could happen. My kids could, witness something happen to their father. I could witness something happen to my husband. We could all be succumb to some type of police brutality. I refused to be in the car driving into Philadelphia at night once to risk it. So for me, it was like, no, I cannot be in this car and risk your lives. We got home at like around 6 o'clock. That's when we realized they were looting and rioting on our own block. So this part of the situation is where like it kind of gets real. I'm a suburban girl, grew up in Maryland, never seen a protest, never been really a part of a real protest. Never seen any looting in my life, never seen people, I just never seen anything like what happened in Philadelphia. We get home and Corey has been watching the whole thing nonstop for the last 48 hours on his phone. At home and we can hear on our block is like police sirens and firecrackers and it's people screaming. I mean, it's like crazy to the point that can you sleep? I think I was so mentally out of it and also a little bit, if I'm being honest, a little bit terrified that I forced myself to go to bed. I put the kids to sleep, got them in the bed, got crew in bed, and I didn't want to watch any more updates. So I'm coming upstairs, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and Corey is like, they're on our block. And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know. I mean, immediately I prayed, cover this house, cover this home, cover my kids. And I just text my parents to let them know. They texted us to see if we had made it home safely. I texted them to let them know that they were actually on our block. They had broken into 2 stores on like near our corners of our block. We are at the top of the block and this was happening at the bottom of the block. But it was so bad and Corey was watching all of the live streams that he stayed up the entire night because of the fear of what could happen if he had went to sleep. That was a game changer. It was going on for weeks on end. Firecrackers never stopped. The looting honestly never stopped. The Target across the street from my house, they broke into there. I mean, it was just nuts. I think for me, it was like this is scary, to the point that like me and Corey, we had to have a sit down about whether or not we should be having weapons. But that's when we had to really start to think about what was happening in our neighborhood. And when we thought about that, a lot of things went into perspective, right? You know, what do you tell your kids? What do you teach your kids? We don't, us personally, we've decided that we're not going to teach our kids that one specific type of person is the bad guy. Like, we don't want to teach our kids that it's just the police, or that it's all of the police, or that you should be scared of the police, because I don't think that's true, especially in our family. Chubbs, my stepson, his stepfather is a police officer. As a Christian, woman, I don't want to instill fear into my kids. I want to instill wisdom into them, and knowledge and understanding, but definitely not fear. And I don't want them walking around being fearful of the police. But when you're living in a neighborhood where it's loud all around you every day, the news is covered in craziness, people everywhere you go are talking about this, and then not only that, you add in a pandemic on top of it, there is only a matter of time before fear and the devil starts to creep in. And the first sign of it was actually with Chubbs. At this point, Corey wasn't going to work, but they opened back up for work like maybe a week after the riots started. And it was so weird to me. I know every time before Corey would go to work, Chubbs would get like really sad. Why are you doing this? Why are you acting like this? And he said, I started crying and was like, I'm scared for my dad. I'm scared that when he goes to work, they could burn his store, they could loot, they're looting, and something could happen to him. I'm scared for my dad. I'm scared my dad, and then he said, I'm scared my dad could die. Fast forward, Camden started to get scared, screaming and crying hysterically, making up all these random excuses for why he can't sleep in his bed. He thought someone was going to break into our home and kill us. And I'm just like, where would you get these ideas? And because a couple weeks had passed, so naturally I'm like not even thinking about the looting. I mean, even though they're still protesting, which is not looting, but they're still protesting and stuff. And that's what he said. He said, well, because they're protesting and they were on our block and they could break into our home. And I'm just like, this is really affecting our children. That's when I was like, we need to have a conversation with them. So you're probably like, what do those conversations look like, and how do you have them when you're in the midst of situations like this, especially when now we are back at square one and it's just as bad as it was when it first started with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So for us in my home, it looked like explaining, for one, that we do not allow fear to live in our hearts. It's a lot easier said than done, but I had to explain to them that, we are going to be okay. How do I know that we're going to be okay? Because I believe God would never put us in danger. And then if there was danger near us, he would give us warnings, and the Holy Spirit would tell us to flee. And we would be able to hear clearly from God and know when to move. So that was phase one of the conversation. Phase two was breaking down the house, as far as what the house and our physical bodies, how we are protected physically in our home. So I took them through the house to show them our Simply Safe alarm system, to show them where all the camera was, where all the sensors were, how the sensors would work, what would happen if the sensors went off, why the door locks automatically, that there's sensors on the windows and everything like that, and what would happen if someone did break in, and how we would, protect them. Your mental plays a toll. Like, okay, yes, I know you're going to tell me that not all cops are bad and they're not coming for our block, but they are. So what can you tell me that's physically going to protect us? So then the third thing we talked about was the Black Lives Matter movement and what that really meant and how that affects us. So we expressed to them that you are a black boy, and because you are black, and having to explain to them slavery and what that meant and how that happened and how that affected where we are today, and changed the scope of how people see us and view us and all of those differences. Of course, they're not silly. They have YouTube, they have phones, they've seen videos, they know what Black Lives Matter is, and they know about the police. Explain to them that all cops are not bad. We explain to them that most cops are not out to hurt you. Just like if there were 100 Skittles in a bag, maybe 5 of those Skittles, the S would be rubbed off. And so those are like the weird Skittles. Those are the Skittles that don't fit or got messed up or were damaged. But out of 100, if only 5 are bad, you're still going to eat the other 95 because you still have more good ones than you have bad ones. So it took a lot of breaking that down and explaining to them the difference between a good cop and a bad cop. The last thing we talked about was our expectations for our children. So we had to, first of all, in deciding to talk to them about this, we had to first come up with what was understandable for their age. And I think that's the most important part, is being able to decipher your children by their ages. So if your child is like 4 and 5 and they're asking questions, maybe they don't need to understand every single thing, or maybe it needs to be broken down in elementary. My kids are 9 and 10, but their mental capacity as far as outwardly worldly things that are happening is at like about a 12 and a 13. So do they need to know how to behave and react and respond in front of a police officer? They do. Do I think they need to stand up for themselves at the age of 10 and 9? No. So again, I don't have teenagers. If I had teenagers or middle schoolers, then the situation and the conversation would be different. But for my elementary kids, the conversation is, you respect your elders, you respect the police officers, you do what they say, and you come home. That's literally, that's what I said. That sounds so crazy that you have to say. And the part about all of this that's hard is that there is a fine line, I feel like, as a parent and as a mother, that you walk when you're addressing Black Lives Matter and police brutality with your child. It's almost as if one part of you wants to tell them, stand up for your rights, and then the other part of you wants to tell them, come home to your mommy. So then there's that. It's like you teeter on the edge of both of those things, and it's almost heartbreaking, because if the change doesn't happen now, then my kid could possibly be the one fighting for the change later. And my kid could be Breonna Taylor, or my kid could be Trayvon Martin, or my kid could be George Floyd, Yeah. As a mom, I have to think about my kids and their health and mental health and their well-being. And sometimes it gets a lot, especially in 2020. 2020 is a lot, has been a lot. And I think sometimes we don't put that into perspective. And as much as I want change, I do, not even as much as I want things to change. But I just want my kids to be able to, see the change. And I want them to make it another day, and I want them to not be scared to go to the playground, and I want them not to be scared every time daddy goes to work. And I also, want them as a Christian woman not to live in fear. So it's something that, has been really hard for us, and maybe even for other people. And if it's been hard for you, then I would love to hear about it, and we can chit chat, and talk about it in the comments. But that's all I got for today, guys. Just remember to protect your kids, protect yourselves, and to protect our Black lives, honestly. And if you thought that this was a good video, please like, comment, and share. I would love to hear your feedback, and yeah, I will see you again later.
I don't need your edgy style, your edgy style.